I've always thought that Kevin Smith was an interesting guy, irrespective of his directorial efforts, which I mostly enjoy. No, he's not James Cameron or Christopher Nolan or Martin Scorsese or Ridley Scott or Quentin Tarantino. They're all serious directors who make serious movies that cost serious money and make serious money. But that's not to say that Kevin Smith is worse than them. Rather, I think he is a serious director who prefers to make movies that he enjoys. Kevin Smith is the guy that a lot of people who make movies want to be like, even if they don't admit it. He got his start on Clerks, which cost a whopping $27,575 to make when he was just 24. He raised that budget by getting it from family and friends, selling his comic book collection, and maxing out his credit cards. Color film was more expensive, so he used black and white and cast his friends to play the roles. It's a simple film that's centered around dialogue and shows us the day in the life of Dante and Randall, the titular clerks. Smith, who worked as a clerk in a convenience store and a video store, did what so many writers suggest. He wrote about what he knew. He had been inspired just a few years earlier by another indie film, Slacker, written, produced, and directed by Richard Linklater. Linklater did Slacker on a budget of $23,000 and did the entire thing without permits. They just did it. It inspired Smith with the confidence that he could just do it. There was no need to get permission, and the money wasn't necessarily something that would ruin him. Clerks was screened at Sundance in 1994 and won the Filmmakers Award. Sundance's where now disgraced producer Harvey Weinstein also offered to buy the film for his production and distribution company Miramax. In the same year, Clerks went to Cannes, where it and Smith picked up more awards. Even though it wasn't given a wide release, the movie still made millions and, more importantly, helped supercharge the independent film movement. There's indie film before Clerks and indie film after Clerks. It showed how a singular artist with limited resources could make a beloved film. Next up was Mallrats, which, despite not doing well, became a cult hit and is certainly a Kevin Smith film. In Chasing Amy, Kevin Smith cast Ben Affleck in one of his first significant roles. He had worked with Affleck and helped get the script for a little movie called Good Will Hunting to Miramax and turned it into a movie. When Kevin Smith and his friend Jason Mewes imprinted their handprints and footprints at Grauman's Chinese Theater in LA, Affleck was selected to give a speech. In it, he said that his regret about the Oscars was not thanking Smith, who has an executive producer credit on the movie during the ceremony. It's not too far-fetched to say that without Kevin Smith, there would be no Good Will Hunting.
My really principal main regret about the Oscars and that whole movie is that on Oscar night I neglected to thank Kevin because I was kind of overwhelmed, and there really would be no Good Will Hunting script, certainly wouldn't have gotten made without him. So I want to take this opportunity to remedy that. Pretend that I'm on the stage at the Oscars and say, thank you, Kevin Smith, very, very much.
Dogma had a stacked cast and attracted plenty of controversy from Catholics. It starred Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Chris Rock, Selma Hayek, George Carlin, and Alan Rickman, and made 3 times its budget. Next up was Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Up until this movie, Smith had stuck with his guns and made the movies that he wanted to make. They were cheap enough that studios didn't interfere, and even if they didn't do well in theaters, they gained cult followings or made their money back in home media sales. Then he did 2004's Jersey Girl, also starring Ben Affleck. It marked a departure from Smith's typical film fare and flopped critically and commercially. It certainly had an impact on Smith, who mentioned in an interview on the Clerks 2 DVD, quote, "All these people were just trashing this movie's stars instead of looking at the movie itself. I get that a lot of people didn't like it, but dude, I spent 2 years of my life on that movie," end quote. 2006's Clerks 2 marked a return to success for Smith. The movie did well at the box office and well with critics. It saw him return to Cannes for a 3rd time, with a sequel to his movie from 12 years prior. His return was met with an 8-minute standing ovation, and it showed that when Kevin Smith made a Kevin Smith film, it did well. 2008's Zack and Miri did well enough critically, but was a commercial flop, which all of Smith's films, to an extent, have been since. Smith was severely disappointed. In his own words, quote, "That was supposed to be the one that punched us through to the next level. Everyone thought that it would do 60 to 70 million, and it wound up doing Kevin Smith business. I was like, I'm done," end quote. 2010's Cop Out fared poorly with critics and at the box office. When he lashed out at critics, it earned him even more ire. But Cop Out was, again, a break from the kind of films he usually does. Smaller budget, featuring people he knows, and of course irreverent. It's a comedy, but it doesn't feel like a Kevin Smith movie. He hasn't fared better with his subsequent films. 2011's Red State caused a huge controversy when Smith announced that he would auction the distribution rights to Red State, only to self-distribute it in the end. It led to accusations of dishonesty, which were met with a lawyerly response from Smith, who also noted that by pulling this stunt, he was burning bridges, and boy did he burn them. Post Red State, none of his movies had broken $5 million at the box office. That's not a huge problem considering how cheap they are, but still, you need to be able to offer investors something. 2014's Tusk was a horror comedy that cost $3 million and made $1.9 million and was met with mixed reviews. 2016's Yoga Hosers starred his daughter, Harley Quinn, her friend, Lily Rose Depp, and Johnny Depp, and was another comedy horror movie. It, like Tusk, were in part inspired by episodes of Smith's podcast, Smodcast, and were personal projects that he wanted to take on. Rotten Tomatoes' critical consensus was not kind. Quote, undisciplined, unfunny, and bereft of evident purpose, Yoga Hosers represents a particularly grating low point in Kevin Smith's once promising career. End quote. 2019's Jane Silent Bob reboot fared much better critically, but also failed to earn its budget back. However, on a personal level, it marked the rekindling of the friendship between Kevin Smith and Ben Affleck, which had gone cold for more than a decade. 2022's Kilroy Was Here was released as an NFT. The less said about that, the better. Most recently, Clerks 3 had decent enough reviews, but again failed to earn its money back at the box office. It had been in development for more than a decade, and had gone through a couple of rewrites and stalls before finally getting made. Over the years, he's done plenty of things. Several TV episodes, running his own comic book store, and hosting several podcasts. But he made his name in film, and that's what he'll be remembered for. His early works are distinct. They're Kevin Smith films. That mark went away as the new millennium dawned, and it's not something he's quite gotten back to. His early work consists of fun, irreverent comedies that have an emphasis on dialogue, and I, for one, hope he gets back on track soon.